One of my favorite parts about statistics is data visualization. I'm a very visual person, and I think you get the messages in a much more compact, understandable form when it's visualized. And one of my favorite parts of data visualization is maps. So what I'm going to do is go through three maps here, and I'm just going to comment on some things I'm noticing, and then what I really want you to see is how I kind of sum it all up in a couple sentences, assuming that the person might not be able to see the map I'm looking at. Maybe I'm reporting on it and I'm talking to my friend and I'm saying, okay, here's basically what I'm seeing in this map. And you might not capture all the stories, but trying to get the general trend and interesting outliers or interesting observations. So let me start off with this map here. So some things I'm noticing, I'm certainly noticing a lot of dark around here and around here. So it feels like on the edges, especially the west and south here, and then northeast a little bit down here in Florida. The title of the map I notice is Who is Wearing Masks in the US? I noticed that darker means more people are wearing it. I'm initially going to be very suspicious about, is this just measuring population? Is it the number of people wearing masks? Because if so, then of course areas with more people are going to have more people wearing masks. But as it turns out, it says chance, if you can't read that, that's fine. It says the chance that 5 random people in 5 encounters would be wearing a mask. So it's talking about percentages or rates. In other words, it doesn't matter the size of the population. It's accounting for that, which is good. I'm of course noticing the absence of dark areas here in the middle. So I think the way I'd sum this up is, according to this data, um, people living in the West Coast and southern Texas, the Northeast, maybe down in Florida, are much more likely to be wearing masks when out in public. And I think I clicked somewhere where it said if they're going to be within 6 feet of another person. So maybe not on a run, but maybe grocery shopping. So the short thing there is the people in the coastal areas and southern Texas are more likely to be wearing masks than people in the Midwest, northern US, or even I think this is called the Deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. Those areas, there's like a strip through there where people are much less likely to be wearing masks. Then I also want to point out some outliers that don't fit that pattern. So I'd say there are little clusters inside the Midwest where there is a higher portion of people wearing masks. And I would happen to notice that those are the urban areas. This is Chicago up here, Detroit right here. Um, so most of the Midwest is not wearing masks and most of the time when they go out. Um, Compared to the coastal areas and the cities where people are much more likely to be wearing masks. That would be my story. And then you could, of course, dive down into that and peel off layers of why. I mean, this seems to line up pretty well with political maps or perhaps rural urban maps we could line up. But the initial stories are just the patterns that I see and the outliers, the ones that don't necessarily fit the pattern. I might also notice, like wherever I live, so in Harrisonburg area, it looks like we do actually have a pretty high percentage of people wearing masks. Next map. I'm going to pull this down here. It's a pretty cool map. It's a fire and smoke map. Let me show you here. And I believe it is, yep, down here it says refreshed at 3:52. It's 40, so it must be refreshed every hour or at least several times a day. Each of these little circles is an air quality sensor that's located around the US somewhere, and it measures the particulate matter. There's a key up here. You always want to look for a key. So I'm noticing that green is good quality air, the best quality, then yellow down to purple, and maroon there are very bad air quality. And then we also notice that there's some fires. Those are the positioning of forest fires that are currently going on in the United States, and the smoke. Um, so we can see the different layers of smoke. This may even be above the clouds. So just because we see ourselves in a region of smoke doesn't mean we'd look outside and necessarily be able to see that smoke. So these are some things I'm noticing. Then I'm starting to notice, okay, where are the green dots? Well, most of the Midwest, basically where people are not wearing masks, according to my last map, but not everywhere. The Northeast also looks like it has very good air quality, and the Northwest also. It's really the poor areas are the poor air quality areas are Southwest, and if I would zoom in there, I can kind of see some of these really bad air qualities around San Francisco and Los Angeles. Um, the fires seem to be mostly, if not all, in the West. I'm not seeing any fires in the eastern half of the United States. So my summary of this would be um, air quality tends to be relatively good all across the United States, especially in the eastern half, except for kind of the Philadelphia, New York. There's like a big kind of cluster of cities there, and that has a little worse air quality. But by far the worst quality air in the US is coming in the Southwest, the California area. Forest fires are almost entirely in the West, especially in the Southwest, Arizona and California over here. As for the smoke, I'm not sure I really noticed too much of a trend other than the southeast of the United States does not seem to have very much smoke right now for whatever reason. I don't know enough about airflow and what smoke actually means, but I would say that the southeast doesn't have much smoke. Looking for outliers, so I'm looking for little data points that don't fit those general patterns. Um, so in general, the Midwest or the Plains, Great Plains looks pretty good. We do see some up in the Dakotas where the air quality is lower. That is a surprise to me. I would certainly say anything that's a surprise. I guess I would have thought this rural areas would have really good air quality. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm also a little surprised at the forest fires there in the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming. I guess I think of them more in Colorado, Arizona, California. But fires seem to be pretty spread out throughout the West. So those would be some observations on that map. And again, those are the kind of surface level stories. Then you could go deeper and try to figure out why that is, what's happening, why are some of the cities in the east so much higher air quality, at least right now, than the ones out here in California. Okay, here's a final one. This map needs a little bit of explaining in terms of how they're being colored. So they're colored by what's called the Nielsen Media Market, which breaks the country up not really into counties or states, but into groups of people that are fairly similar so that when you advertise or do marketing, you try to be really efficient about which people you're targeting. So these are what's called media markets. And I thought there was like 400 or so. So they must, if they're right next to each other, they must not have like the boundary lines on this particular map. So that's one thing. In terms of some of my first observation, I'm seeing a lot of green, which represents healthcare, and a lot of yellow, which represents taxes. I'm looking at what this was in 2018, the elections that were most mentioned in ads. In the Southeast, I'm seeing a bunch of colors all at once that seem to be representing different things. And so once I start trying to get the trends, it looks like healthcare um, is the biggest issue that was mentioned in 2018 in the ads, in the campaigns, followed by taxes. So this is lining up pretty nicely with the title of the map, and then jobs to a lesser degree, but we do see a few different places where jobs were the biggest issue mentioned. So healthcare, taxes, and jobs. Do I see a pattern of where the healthcare is showing up? I don't know. I guess maybe it seems a little more in the western half of the United States. Taxes really seems to be spread out throughout the United States. I'm not seeing a pattern there for how it's showing up, other than it seems to be a big issue all around the US. Similar thing with jobs, although I would say that most of the places um, where the ads focused on jobs was in the eastern half of the United States. Not exactly sure. Those of you in sociology might know more about why that would be. Um, and then if I'm looking for outliers, I would notice that there's a little media market over here that is the only one really in the western half of the US that's focusing on jobs. I'd also notice that the Southeast seems to be very different. It's not like one constant issue that unites that entire Southeast. We have the pro-Trump, jobs, education, immigration, taxes, budget. I might also look at where the pro-Trump and anti-Trump are. It's kind of interesting. We don't really see it much around the US except Northern California. We see some anti-Trump. And then Northern Virginia. Those seem to be the two places where there were a lot of anti-Trump ads. And these pro-Trump ads down here, ironically, Harrisonburg is right smack in the middle of this large pro-Trump and this large anti-Trump sector, which positions us kind of curious. So in summary, when I'm looking at a map, I try to figure out what's going on first, it's even talking about. Then I'm looking for patterns or trends, overall big picture trends, outliers, things that don't fit that pattern, and then anything interesting or that might be relevant to me. So that's why I tend to look at Virginia area when I'm looking at a map of anything. So those are some of my tips in map analysis.